Where's this?
That's what I love about these high school girls, man. I get older, they stay the same age.
Honey!
What?
Where's my super suit?
Assemble. When I was a kid, there was a place,
Dr. Sleep.
a dark place. They closed it down and let it rot.
For Shining fan film, sequel film, this is probably one of my favorites of the year.
But the things that lived there,
Yeah, so Dr. Sleep, it's a little bit of an interesting case because it is based off the short story, but Mike Flanagan with this film does something interesting in that, as opposed to the Watchmen show on HBO, which is very, very clearly following the comic. Like there are things that are dropped in that film that specifically make you aware that it is following the comic, not the movie.
Not many ride the bus this far north. You're running away from something?
With Dr. Sleep, with what Flanagan is doing, he's kind of managing to both pay tribute and ode to both King and Kubrick at the same time, because Kubrick's film really has an iconography really on its own now at this point, and with the amount of hatred that King threw at that.
Nah, I didn't like the ending.
And what Flanagan manages to do here, in terms of paying both lip service and tribute to both of them, while still managing to have the film stand on its own, be a really good resolution to all of the arcs, while still throwing in certain segments from the other books and the films. It really is impressive. Like, I went into this film really having no expectations. I was glad that Flanagan was finally getting a shot at doing something on the big screen. But for my money, and also for another 2.5 hour long horror film, this really, really was awesome. And I think it comes down to, again, its emphasis on character.
I'm running away from myself, I guess.
Over setup and scares, I think. It doesn't quite have the atmosphere that the original Shining does, but it's very self-aware of that. And it really does anchor this film in two things at first. One, Danny Torrance and his struggles and his residual PTSD that he has and how that follows him throughout his life as he grows into an older man. And also, what's it called? This cult, the cult of the Black Hat, I think is what it's called, that goes around like eating other people's shine. Because that was one of the things that the original Shining film never really focused on, is it kind of used Danny's shining as an afterthought in terms of overall just kind of, because that's not what Kubrick wanted to focus on. Kubrick wanted to focus on slowly going insane in an isolated setting, as opposed to what the film was about, which was the juxtaposition of the telepathic abilities with these settings, with these crazy ghosts that fed on that. But introducing kind of this new antagonist that was more so real world, and then throwing them up against each other and kind of mixing and meshing them together. It really, really was interesting to see. And in terms of the new characters that were introduced were good. I feel like the antagonists were well enough because you actually got to spend a decent amount of time with them and you really got to know who they were as people. And that I felt humanized and fleshed them out a lot. And it got to the point where even with the third act, and you know where it's going as soon as the movie starts, but even with the third act, it was really, really well done, I thought. And even though there were a lot of Shining references, there are a lot of Shining references, fan service, lip service, whatever you want to call it. There is a lot of it in there, but I think it is one of the few times where it is actually well warranted. And in terms of the actual ending, Flanagan actually does something really clever, because he takes the original ending of the Shining book and makes that the ending of this movie, and it actually works really, really well. Not just as paying lip service, but also as a good wrap-up for Danny's story. So, yeah, Dr. Sleep, I heavily recommend. It's, again, not one of my favorites of the year, but definitely one of the more enjoyable theater-going experiences I've had.
Come play with us forever and ever.